Your soulmate stunned everyone by choosing you are. Don't scroll, listen to this. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now because if these words stopped you, it's not by accident, it's because something already shifted in your favor before you even realized it. And listen closely because the universe is speaking softly but clearly right now, telling you that a decision was made, quietly, boldly, against the noise of expectations. And that decision was you. And don't scroll, listen to this, because what stunned everyone wasn't just the choice itself, it was the timing, the certainty, the calm confidence behind it. And your heart needs this right now because you've spent so long wondering if you were overlooked, underestimated, or waiting too long for love to recognize you. And listen carefully, because recognition doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives as peace settling into your chest before the world catches up. And don't scroll, listen to this, because while others questioned, compared, or doubted, your soulmate felt something deeper than logic, something older than fear, something that didn't need approval to be real. And your heart needs this right now because you didn't win this choice by proving anything, you didn't audition for it, you didn't compete for it, you aligned with it. And listen closely, because alignment is quiet power. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you've been aligning for a long time without realizing it, choosing healing over reacting, choosing honesty over pretending, choosing growth even when no one was watching. And your heart needs this right now because those unseen choices changed your frequency. And listen carefully, because when your frequency changes, destiny responds. And don't scroll, listen to this. Because the universe noticed when you stopped chasing validation and started trusting your inner voice, when you stopped begging for clarity and started honoring boundaries. And your heart needs this right now because those moments rewrote your story. And listen closely, because while others saw you as unexpected, your soulmate saw you as inevitable. And don't scroll, listen to this, because inevitability doesn't rush. It recognizes, it chooses, it commits quietly before it speaks out loud. And your heart needs this right now because you may still be processing how this happened, how someone could look past assumptions, past distractions, past opinions, and still land on you. And listen carefully, because the answer is simple and profound. They felt safe, seen, and steady with you. And don't scroll, listen to this, because safety is magnetic at the soul level. And your heart needs this right now because safety doesn't come from perfection, it comes from authenticity. And listen closely, because you showed up as yourself even when it felt risky, even when it felt like it might cost you something. And don't scroll, listen to this, because that courage is rare. And your heart needs this right now because rare energy attracts rare choices. And listen carefully, because you may have noticed signs leading up to this, angel numbers appearing at strange times. 11 when you questioned whether you were seen, 222 when you wondered if patience would pay off, 444 when obstacles cleared just enough to keep you moving forward. And don't scroll, listen to this, because those weren't coincidences, they were confirmations that your path was aligning behind the scenes. And your heart needs this right now because while you were focused on becoming whole, the universe was positioning you to be chosen without compromise. And listen closely, because what stunned everyone else was that this choice didn't come from pressure, it came from peace. And don't scroll, listen to this, because peace doesn't announce itself loudly, it settles quietly and refuses to be shaken. And your heart needs this right now because you might still feel disbelief, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And listen carefully, because disbelief is normal when you're not used to being chosen without conditions. And don't scroll, listen to this, because unconditional. Choosing feels unfamiliar when you've had to earn love before, and your heart needs this right now because you don't have to earn this, you aligned with it, and listen closely, because alignment doesn't require convincing anyone, it simply reveals what was already true, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the universe doesn't shock people to entertain them, it shocks them to wake them up to divine order. And your heart needs this right now because divine order doesn't follow human logic. It follows readiness, and listen carefully, because readiness isn't about having everything figured out, it's about being honest with yourself, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you reached that honesty quietly, through tears, reflection, and letting go of versions of yourself that no longer fit, and your heart needs this right now because that letting go made space for this choice to land, and listen closely, because your soulmate didn't choose you because you were perfect, they chose you because you were real, and don't scroll, listen to this, because real love doesn't want performance, it wants presence, and your heart needs this right now because presence is what you offered even when you were unsure, even when you were healing, even when you were still becoming, and listen carefully, because becoming is attractive at the soul level, and don't scroll, listen to this, because souls recognize growth before minds do. And your heart needs this right now because this choice wasn't impulsive, it was intuitive, and listen closely, because intuition is how destiny moves without noise, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the next part of this story isn't about proving anyone wrong, it's about staying grounded in what's right, and your heart needs this right now because staying grounded will help you receive what's coming without shrinking or self-sabotage, and listen carefully, because 777 often appears when a soul contract activates, when two paths finally intersect after necessary lessons are learned, and don't scroll, listen to this, because this intersection didn't happen sooner because it couldn't, not because you weren't enough, but because you were still becoming ready to receive it fully, and your heart needs this right now because readiness is a feeling, not a checklist, and listen closely, because you feel it now as calm instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, and don't scroll, listen to this, because calm love can feel almost unreal if you're used to intensity, and your heart needs this right now because calm is not boring, it's regulated, it's safe, it's sustainable, and listen carefully, because what's coming next will ask you to trust this calm, not question it, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the cliffhanger here isn't whether they chose you, they already did. It's whether you'll fully believe that you were worthy of being chosen all along, and your heart needs this right now because belief is what allows destiny to stay, and listen closely, because the universe doesn't bring you this far to take it away, it brings you here to teach you how to receive without fear, and don't scroll, listen to this, because receiving is your next lesson, and your heart needs this right now because what unfolds next will feel steady, real, and quietly miraculous, and you'll look back at this moment and realize this was when everything truly began. Don't scroll, listen to this message is for you, and your heart needs this right now because this is the moment after the shock settles, when the universe asks you to understand what just happened instead of questioning it, and listen closely because being chosen like this doesn't just surprise other people, it often surprises you. Especially if you spent years being overlooked, misunderstood, or feeling like you were always almost enough but never quite the final choice, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the reason this choice feels unreal is because it didn't come from effort, it came from alignment, and your heart needs this right now because alignment bypasses struggle, it bypasses comparison, it bypasses competition. And listen carefully, because while others were measuring value on the surface, your soulmate was paying attention to what couldn't be faked. The way you stayed true when it was easier to perform, the way you chose growth when no one was rewarding you for it, the way you held compassion without losing your boundaries, and don't scroll, listen to this, because those qualities are invisible to people who chase excitement, but they are undeniable to a soul that is ready to choose depth, and your heart needs this right now because depth is what sustains love when the noise fades, and listen closely, because what stunned everyone wasn't just that they chose you, it was that they chose peace over expectation, truth over convenience, and intuition over approval. And don't scroll, listen to this, because approval seeking leads to temporary choices, but intuition leads to lasting ones, and your heart needs this right now because you were never meant to be a temporary option, and listen carefully, because your journey prepared you for this in ways you didn't recognize at the time, every disappointment that taught you discernment, every heartbreak that forced you inward, every season of solitude that strengthened your sense of self. And don't scroll, listen to this, because solitude refined you, it didn't diminish you, and your heart needs this right now because refined energy stands out without trying, and listen closely, because while others tried to impress, you simply became, and don't scroll, listen to this, because becoming is magnetic at the soul level. And your heart needs this right now because magnetism doesn't beg to be chosen, it is recognized, and listen carefully, because recognition feels different than validation, it feels calm, grounded, and undeniable, and don't scroll, listen to this, because your soulmate didn't choose you in a moment of excitement, they chose you in a moment of clarity. And your heart needs this right now because clarity lasts longer than passion alone, and listen closely, because this clarity didn't arrive overnight, it built quietly as they watched you remain consistent. When others fluctuated, as they saw you hold integrity when shortcuts were available, as they noticed your presence didn't drain them, it grounded them, and don't scroll, listen to this, because grounding energy is rare, and your heart needs this right now because rare energy often goes unrecognized until someone is ready to value it, and listen carefully, because this choice didn't come from desperation, it came from discernment. And don't scroll, listen to this, because discernment is what separates soulmates from lessons, and your heart needs this right now because you've graduated from being a lesson. And listen closely, because graduation doesn't feel like fireworks, it feels like relief, and don't scroll, listen to this, because relief is what you may be feeling now underneath the disbelief, a quiet sense of, I don't have to prove myself anymore. And your heart needs this right now because that feeling is truth landing in your body, and listen carefully, because when truth lands, the nervous system relaxes, and don't scroll, listen to this, because relaxation is the signal of safety, and your heart needs this right now because safety is what allows love to deepen instead of destabilize, and listen closely, because the universe has been sending you confirmations that you were on the right path long before this choice became visible, angel numbers appearing when you were doubting yourself, 11. 11 when you felt unseen, reminding you that alignment was working even when results were delayed, 222 when patience felt heavy, asking you to trust balance instead of force, 444 when doors closed that didn't make sense at the time, protecting you from misaligned outcomes, and don't scroll, listen to this, because those closures weren't punishments, they were positioning. And your heart needs this right now because positioning matters more than timing, and listen carefully, because if this had happened earlier, you might have shrunk, overgiven, or doubted yourself inside the connection, and don't scroll, listen to this, because now you are ready to receive without disappearing, and your heart needs this right now because receiving is a skill you had to learn, and listen closely, because many people can give love, but few know how to receive it without fear, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you learned that by being alone, by sitting with your own worth, by choosing not to chase what wasn't choosing you, and your heart needs this right now because that restraint built self-trust, and listen carefully, because self-trust is what makes being chosen sustainable, and don't scroll, listen to this, because without self-trust, being chosen can feel scary instead of safe, and your heart needs this right now because safety is what allows you to stay present instead of self-sabotaging, and listen closely, because this is the moment where the universe asks you not to minimize what's happening, not to downplay it, not to question whether it will last, but to honor it by staying grounded and open at the same time, and don't scroll, listen to this, because grounding keeps you from fantasizing, and openness keeps you from closing off, and your heart needs this right now because balance is the key to what comes next, and listen carefully, because what comes next will test not your worth, but your ability to stay present without overthinking, and don't scroll. Listen to this, because overthinking belongs to the old version of you that needed certainty to feel safe, and your heart needs this right now because safety now comes from self-alignment, not reassurance, and listen closely, because your soulmate didn't choose you because you were flawless. They chose you because you were honest, emotionally available, and grounded in who you are becoming, and don't scroll, listen to this, because becoming is ongoing, and your heart needs this right now. Because this connection is not the end of your growth, it is the beginning of shared growth, and listen carefully, because shared growth requires two people who are willing to evolve without losing themselves, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you are ready for that now, and your heart needs this right now because readiness is what makes destiny stay, and listen closely, because the shock others felt will fade, opinions will quiet, and what will remain is the reality you are living, and don't scroll, listen to this, because living the reality matters more than explaining it, and your heart needs this right now because you no longer need to justify your happiness, and listen carefully, because justification drains energy that joy needs to grow, and don't scroll, listen to this, because joy grows best in peace, and your heart needs this right now because peace is what you've cultivated, and listen closely, because the cliffhanger here is not whether this choice was real, it's how deeply you will allow yourself to receive it without fear, and don't scroll, listen to this, because receiving fully is the final step of this prophecy, and your heart needs this right now because the universe didn't stun everyone to test you, it stunned them to clear the path, and what unfolds next will not feel chaotic, it will feel steady, intentional, and quietly powerful. And one day you'll look back and realize this was the moment you stopped wondering if you were enough and started living like you always were. Don't scroll, listen to this message is for you, and your heart needs this right now because this is the moment where the meaning behind the choice finally reveals itself, not as a surprise anymore, but as confirmation, and listen closely because being chosen like this wasn't about luck, timing, or chance, it was about alignment reaching a point where it could no longer be ignored, and don't scroll, listen to this, because what stunned everyone else was never meant to stun you. Your soul already knew something was shifting long before the decision became visible, and your heart needs this right now because that inner knowing was quiet, steady, and patient, and listen carefully, because patience is not passive, it's active trust, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you trusted without guarantees, you stayed open without chasing, you healed without applause. And your heart needs this right now because those choices rewired your destiny, and listen closely, because destiny responds to internal shifts faster than external actions. And don't scroll, listen to this, because while others were busy measuring worth through attention, status, or noise, your soulmate was feeling something deeper. Peace when they were around you, clarity when they thought of you, and a grounding presence that didn't ask them to be anyone else. And your heart needs this right now because grounded love is rare. And listen carefully, because rare things are often misunderstood until they are chosen. And don't scroll, listen to this, because misunderstanding never stopped what was meant for you. It only delayed recognition until readiness arrived. And your heart needs this right now because readiness isn't about perfection, it's about emotional availability. And listen closely, because you became emotionally available in a way that didn't abandon your boundaries. And don't scroll, listen to this, because that balance is what made this choice inevitable. And your heart needs this right now because inevitability doesn't force itself, it reveals itself when resistance dissolves. And listen carefully, because resistance dissolved the moment you stopped needing to be chosen to feel whole. And don't scroll, listen to this, because wholeness is magnetic. And your heart needs this right now because magnetic energy doesn't compete, it attracts. And listen closely, because attraction at the soul level isn't loud, it's consistent. And don't scroll, listen to this, because consistency is what your soulmate noticed most. The way you showed up the same whether things were easy or uncertain, the way your values didn't shift to gain approval. And your heart needs this right now because consistency builds trust faster than intensity ever could. And listen carefully, because intensity can impress, but trust sustains. And don't scroll, listen to this, because your soulmate chose sustainability over spectacle, depth over distraction, and truth over temptation. And your heart needs this right now because those choices often shock people who are used to chaos masquerading as passion. And listen closely, because passion rooted in peace looks boring to the unhealed but feels like home to the awakened. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you are awakened now in ways you weren't before. And your heart needs this right now because awakening changes what you recognize as love. And listen carefully, because love is no longer the roller coaster you once thought it had to be, it's the place where your nervous system can finally rest. And don't scroll, listen to this, because rest is what your body responds to now more than excitement. And your heart needs this right now because your body has learned the difference between adrenaline and alignment. And listen closely, because alignment feels calm, certain, and quietly joyful. And don't scroll, listen to this, because joy without anxiety is unfamiliar when you've had to earn affection before. And your heart needs this right now because you don't have to earn this, you aligned with it. And listen carefully, because alignment doesn't come from doing more, it comes from being true. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you were true even when it cost you comfort. And your heart needs this right now because truth has a frequency that cannot be ignored forever. And listen closely, because angel numbers may have been following you through this journey, not as promises, but as reassurance. 11. 11 when you questioned your worth, reminding you that alignment was unfolding. 222 when patience felt heavy, asking you to trust balance instead of force. 333 when support appeared unexpectedly, showing you that you weren't walking alone. And don't scroll, listen to this, because 444 showed up when things fell apart just enough to redirect you, protecting you from settling. And your heart needs this right now because protection often feels like loss before it feels like positioning. And listen carefully, because positioning is what allowed this choice to land cleanly, without chaos, without compromise, without you shrinking to fit. And don't scroll, listen to this, because if this had happened earlier, you might have questioned it, doubted it, or overgiven inside it, and your heart needs this right now because now you can receive without fear, and listen closely. Because receiving is the hardest lesson for people who learn to survive by proving themselves, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you no longer need to prove anything, and your heart needs this right now because proof is replaced by presence, and listen carefully, because presence allows love to grow naturally instead of being monitored, and don't scroll, listen to this, because monitoring drains joy, and your heart needs this right now because joy is what this connection is meant to bring, not anxiety, not comparison, not doubt, and listen closely, because the universe did not surprise everyone to elevate you above others. It did it to teach a lesson about alignment, timing, and inner work, and don't scroll, listen to this, because inner work always pays off in ways that look sudden to outsiders, and your heart needs this right now because sudden outcomes are usually the result of long preparation, and listen carefully, because you prepared quietly, patiently, and honestly, and don't scroll, listen to this. Because honesty is what made you stand out, not perfection, and your heart needs this right now because perfection creates pressure, but honesty creates intimacy, and listen closely, because intimacy is what your soulmate chose, even if others didn't understand it, and don't scroll, listen to this, because understanding from others was never required for this to be right. And your heart needs this right now because approval from the universe matters more than approval from the crowd, and listen carefully, because the universe approved this alignment the moment you stopped betraying yourself to be loved, and don't scroll, listen to this, because self-loyalty is the foundation of lasting love, and your heart needs this right now because you are now capable of staying whole inside connection. And listen closely, because that capability changes everything, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the next phase of this story will not be about proving or convincing, it will be about maintaining alignment through communication, boundaries, and shared growth, and your heart needs this right now because growth does not stop once you are chosen, it deepens, and listen carefully, because deepening love requires vulnerability without fear, and don't scroll, listen to this, because fear no longer has the same power over you, and your heart needs this right now because courage has replaced it, and listen closely, because courage doesn't roar, it steadies, and don't scroll, listen to this, because steadiness is what will carry this connection forward if it's meant to continue. And your heart needs this right now because destiny doesn't end with being chosen, it begins there, and listen carefully, because the cliffhanger here is not whether this choice was real, it's how you will honor it, by staying grounded, open, and aligned with who you are now, and don't scroll, listen to this, because honoring alignment keeps destiny stable. And your heart needs this right now because stability is the new standard you are learning to trust. And when you look back at this moment, you'll realize this wasn't the moment love surprised you, it was the moment you finally allowed yourself to believe you were worthy of being chosen without conditions, and that belief will shape everything that comes next. Don't scroll, listen to this message is for you. And your heart needs this right now because this is the part where the universe asks you to stay steady while reality catches up to what your soul already knows, and listen closely because after the shock of being chosen settles, there's a deeper layer that reveals itself, a layer where meaning replaces surprise, and don't scroll, listen to this, because meaning is what anchors destiny so it doesn't feel temporary or fragile, and your heart needs this right now because you're not meant to celebrate this choice from excitement alone, you're meant to understand it, and listen carefully, because understanding prevents self-sabotage, and don't scroll, listen to this, because many people lose aligned blessings by questioning them instead of receiving them, and your heart needs this right now because receiving without suspicion is something you had to learn the hard way, and listen closely, because your past taught you to brace for disappointment, to expect conditions, to look for the catch, and don't scroll, listen to this, because this time there is no hidden agenda, and your heart needs this right now because aligned love does not come with traps, it comes with clarity, and listen carefully, because clarity doesn't always feel exciting at first, it feels calm, grounded, and almost unfamiliar, and don't scroll, listen to this. Because unfamiliar calm can be mistaken for boredom when you're used to emotional chaos, and your heart needs this right now because chaos was never passion, it was dysregulation, and listen closely, because your nervous system has been healing quietly, teaching you how to recognize safety instead of intensity, and don't scroll, listen to this, because safety is what allows love to grow roots, and your heart needs this right now because roots are what sustain connection through change, and listen carefully. Because your soulmate didn't choose you because you were the most dramatic option, they chose you because you were the most real, and don't scroll, listen to this, because real love doesn't need to convince anyone, it simply exists and remains, and your heart needs this right now because remaining is what matters when novelty fades, and listen closely, because others were stunned because they were looking at surface-level logic, not soul-level alignment, and don't scroll, listen to this. Because soul-level alignment often looks illogical to people who haven't done the inner work, and your heart needs this right now because you did that work, quietly, patiently, without guarantees, and listen carefully, because you stayed true even when it felt like no one was noticing, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the universe noticed, and your heart needs this right now because the universe always responds to authenticity, and listen closely, because authenticity has a frequency that cannot be imitated, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you stopped pretending, stopped performing, stopped shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort zone, and your heart needs this right now because that self-respect rewrote your energetic signature, and listen carefully, because when your energy changed, the options available to you changed too, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you were no longer available for half choices, second guesses, or emotional uncertainty. And your heart needs this right now because your soulmate felt that shift even if they couldn't name it, and listen closely, because they felt that choosing you meant choosing stability, integrity, and growth, not just attraction, and don't scroll, listen to this, because growth-based love scares people who are attached to comfort, but it attracts people who are ready to build something real, and your heart needs this right now because building requires intention, not impulse, and listen carefully. Because intention is what guided this choice, not pressure or competition. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you didn't win, you aligned, and your heart needs this right now because alignment doesn't expire, and listen closely, because expiration only happens when something is fueled by insecurity, and don't scroll, listen to this, because insecurity once kept you questioning whether love could stay, and your heart needs this right now because you don't question your worth the way you used to, and listen carefully, because worth anchored inside does not fluctuate with attention, and don't scroll, listen to this, because that internal anchor is what makes this choice sustainable, and your heart needs this right now because sustainability is what turns a moment into a future, and listen closely, because the universe doesn't shock people for entertainment, it shocks them to break old narratives, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the old narrative said you had to fight to be chosen, and your heart needs this right now because that Narrative is over, and listen carefully, because this choice happened without you forcing anything, proving anything, or sacrificing yourself. And don't scroll, listen to this, because that alone is proof of alignment, and your heart needs this right now because aligned love doesn't require self-abandonment. And listen closely, because self-abandonment was the price you paid in past connections. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you learned from that pain instead of repeating it. And your heart needs this right now because learning transforms pain into wisdom. And listen carefully, because wisdom is what allowed you to hold space without losing yourself. And don't scroll, listen to this, because holding space is different from holding on to uncertainty. And your heart needs this right now because you released uncertainty without closing your heart. And listen closely, because that balance is rare. And don't scroll, listen to this, because rarity attracts depth, not drama. And your heart needs this right now because depth is what your soulmate recognized in you. And listen carefully, because depth doesn't shout, it resonates. And don't scroll, listen to this, because resonance is what made this choice feel undeniable to them. And your heart needs this right now because undeniable love does not need to explain itself to onlookers. And listen closely, because opinions from the outside don't get a vote in soul contracts. And don't scroll, listen to this, because soul contracts activate when both people are ready to meet without masks. And your heart needs this right now because you removed your mask long ago. And listen carefully, because removing the mask was scary, lonely, and uncomfortable at times. And don't scroll, listen to this, because that discomfort was the doorway to this alignment. And your heart needs this right now because you didn't bypass the work, you walked through it. And listen closely, because walking through it made you strong enough to receive love without fear. And don't scroll, listen to this, because fear would have sabotaged this if it arrived earlier. And your heart needs this right now because timing protected you, not delayed you. And listen carefully, because divine timing doesn't rush readiness, it waits for it. And don't scroll, listen to this, because readiness is what you hold now. And your heart needs this right now because readiness allows you to stay present instead of overthinking. And listen closely, because overthinking was a survival response, not intuition. And don't scroll, listen to this, because intuition feels calm. And your heart needs this right now because calm is what surrounds this choice, even if excitement flickers on the surface. And listen carefully, because calm excitement is different from anxious anticipation. And don't scroll, listen to this, because anxious anticipation drains, but calm excitement nourishes. And your heart needs this right now because nourishment is what love is meant to provide. And listen closely, because this chapter is not about convincing yourself this is real, it's about trusting yourself enough to receive it without flinching. And don't scroll, listen to this, because trust is the final lesson here. Trust in yourself, trust in the growth you've done, and trust that what is aligned will not ask you to shrink, hide, or doubt your worth. And your heart needs this right now because trusting yourself anchors destiny. And when destiny is anchored, it doesn't slip away, it builds, steadily, quietly, and powerfully. And when you look back at this moment, you'll realize this wasn't just about being chosen by someone else, it was about finally choosing yourself in a way that allowed love to meet you fully. And that choice will shape everything that comes next. Don't scroll, listen to this message is for you. And your heart needs this right now because this is the part where destiny stops feeling abstract and starts feeling personal, where what once sounded like a prophecy now feels like something you can finally touch. And listen closely because being chosen didn't just change how others see you, it changed how the universe is asking you to see yourself. And don't scroll, listen to this, Because this stage is not about celebration alone, it's about integration, and your heart needs this right now because integration is what allows blessings to stay instead of slipping away. And listen carefully, because many people receive alignment but lose it by doubting it, shrinking inside it, or testing it unnecessarily. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you are being guided not to repeat that pattern. And your heart needs this right now because you have already done too much inner work to sabotage yourself at the finish line. And listen closely, because what you are learning now is how to stand in love without bracing for loss. And don't scroll, listen to this, because bracing once protected you, but now it blocks intimacy, and your heart needs this right now because intimacy requires presence, not armor. And listen carefully, because the version of you that survived disappointment is not the version of you meant to receive aligned love. And don't scroll, listen to this, because survival energy kept you alert, guarded, and self-sufficient, but alignment invites softness without weakness, and your heart needs this right now because softness grounded in self-trust is strength. And listen closely, because you have that strength now, even if it feels unfamiliar. And don't scroll, listen to this, because unfamiliar does not mean unsafe, it means new, and your heart needs this right now because new energy often feels quiet compared to chaos. And listen carefully, because chaos trained your nervous system to equate intensity with importance. And don't scroll, listen to this, because importance now feels like consistency, honesty, and emotional safety. And your heart needs this right now because your body recognizes safety faster than your mind does. And listen closely, because your body is not tense around this choice, it is calm, open, and grounded. And don't scroll, listen to this, because that calm is not accidental. It's the result of healing, and your heart needs this right now because healing changes what you attract and what you can sustain. And listen carefully, because your soulmate did not choose you because you were flawless, they chose you because you were emotionally present, self-aware, and capable of growth without defensiveness. And don't scroll, listen to this, because those qualities are what make love livable, not just desirable. And your heart needs this right now because livable love lasts when excitement fades and real life begins. And listen closely, because the universe is now shifting you from the phase of longing into the phase of embodiment, where you don't just hope for love, you live in a way that supports it. And don't scroll, listen to this, because embodiment means your words, actions, and boundaries align with your values. And your heart needs this right now because misalignment once caused pain, confusion, and self-doubt. And listen carefully, because you corrected that not by changing others, but by changing how you showed up for yourself. And don't scroll, listen to this, because self-consistency is what made this choice possible. And your heart needs this right now because self-consistency builds trust in yourself first. And listen closely, because trust in yourself is what allows you to trust someone else without losing your center. And don't scroll, listen to this, because losing your center was never love, it was attachment fueled by fear. And your heart needs this right now because fear no longer leads you. And listen carefully, because courage does, quiet courage, the kind that doesn't announce itself but shows up daily through honesty, patience, and restraint. And don't scroll, listen to this, because restraint was one of your greatest lessons, learning when not to chase, not to over-explain, not to abandon yourself just to keep someone close. And your heart needs this right now because that restraint built self-respect. And listen closely, because self-respect is the foundation this connection stands on. And don't scroll, listen to this, because without self-respect, being chosen would feel unstable, like something that could be taken away at any moment. and your heart needs this right now because you don't feel that instability anymore, and listen carefully, because stability comes from knowing that even if something changes, you will remain whole, and don't scroll, listen to this, because wholeness is what makes you magnetic without effort. And your heart needs this right now because magnetism doesn't beg, it allows, and listen closely, because allowing is what you are being asked to practice now, allowing love to show up without interrogation, allowing joy without guilt, allowing yourself to be seen without shrinking, and don't scroll, listen to this, because shrinking was a habit formed to keep peace in unstable environments, and your heart needs this right now because peace no longer requires you to disappear. And listen carefully, because you are learning how to take up space gently but fully, and don't scroll, listen to this, because taking up space doesn't mean dominating, it means existing unapologetically, and your heart needs this right now because unapologetic existence is what aligned love responds to, and listen closely, because the universe is also watching how you handle this moment, not to judge you, but to reinforce patterns, and don't scroll, listen to this. Because patterns repeated become identities, and your heart needs this right now because your identity is shifting from someone who waits to someone who receives, and listen carefully, because receiving requires vulnerability without desperation, and don't scroll, listen to this, because desperation once came from fear of loss, and your heart needs this right now because fear of loss has been replaced by trust in alignment, and listen closely, because trust does not mean certainty. It means confidence in your ability to respond wisely, and don't scroll, listen to this, because wisdom is what you gain through every setback that didn't break you, and your heart needs this right now because wisdom is what allows love to deepen instead of destabilize, and listen carefully, because depth requires patience, communication, and mutual respect, not urgency, and don't scroll, listen to this, because urgency was a teacher, not a destination, and your heart needs this right now because the lesson has been learned. And listen closely, because what comes next will ask you to stay grounded when excitement rises, to stay open when vulnerability appears, and to stay honest when fear tries to whisper old stories, and don't scroll, listen to this, because old stories no longer define your future, and your heart needs this right now because you are writing a new one, not through force, but through alignment, and listen carefully, because alignment doesn't guarantee perfection, it guarantees authenticity. And don't scroll, listen to this, because authenticity is what sustains connection through real-life challenges, and your heart needs this right now because real love isn't fragile, it's resilient, and listen closely, because resilience comes from two people who can stand as individuals while choosing each other, and don't scroll, listen to this, because that balance is what stunned everyone, and your heart needs this right now because balance doesn't look dramatic, it looks steady, and listen carefully, because steady love is what builds futures, not moments, and don't scroll, listen to this, because futures are built quietly, choice by choice, boundary by boundary, and your heart needs this right now because you are capable of building something real without losing yourself, and listen closely, because the cliffhanger here isn't whether love stays, it's how deeply you will allow yourself to live from alignment instead of fear, and don't scroll, listen to this, because living from alignment is the real victory, and your heart needs this right now because everything that unfolds next will mirror the self-trust you hold now, and when you look back, you'll realize this part wasn't about proving you were chosen, it was about learning how to remain chosen by yourself while receiving love from another, and that lesson will shape the rest of your story. Don't scroll, listen to this message is for you, and your heart needs this right now because this is the final shift, the moment where everything you've learned, healed, and embodied finally locks into place. And listen closely because this part is not about anticipation anymore, it's about grounded truth. And don't scroll, listen to this, because grounded truth doesn't shout, it settles, it anchors, it becomes part of who you are. And your heart needs this right now because you are no longer standing at the edge of becoming, you are standing inside it. And listen carefully, because this is where the universe stops testing your patience and starts honoring your consistency. And don't scroll, listen to this, because consistency is what carried you here when motivation faded, when hope wavered, and when silence tempted you to doubt yourself. And your heart needs this right now because you didn't quit on yourself. And listen closely, because not quitting rewrote your energetic signature. And don't scroll, listen to this, because your soulmate didn't just choose you in a moment, they responded to a pattern, a steady frequency of authenticity, emotional maturity, and self-respect that could not be ignored anymore. And your heart needs this right now because being chosen at this level isn't about romance alone, it's about recognition. And listen carefully, because recognition feels different than validation. It doesn't inflate you, it grounds you. And don't scroll. Listen to this, because grounding is what allows love to grow without fear. And your heart needs this right now because fear once dictated your reactions, your timing, and your emotional availability. And listen closely, because fear is no longer in control here. And don't scroll, listen to this, because you can feel the difference now. The way your body stays calm even when emotions rise. The way your thoughts no longer spiral the way they used to. And your heart needs this right now because that regulation is proof of healing, not detachment. And listen carefully, because detachment numbs, but healing stabilizes. And don't scroll, listen to this, because stabilization is what allows you to remain open without losing yourself. And your heart needs this right now because openness used to feel dangerous. And listen closely, because now it feels natural. And don't scroll, listen to this, because natural love does not require performance, it does not demand overgiving, and it does not punish honesty. And your heart needs this right now because those old dynamics are no longer available to you. And listen carefully, because you wouldn't even recognize yourself in them anymore. And don't scroll, listen to this, because outgrowing old patterns can feel lonely before it feels liberating. And your heart needs this right now because liberation is what you're stepping into now. And listen closely, because liberation doesn't mean independence from love, it means freedom within love. And don't scroll, listen to this, because freedom within love is what makes commitment sustainable. And your heart needs this right now because sustainability is the foundation of everything real. And listen carefully, because your soulmate sensed this in you before they could explain it. They felt that choosing you didn't mean losing themselves, it meant expanding. And don't scroll, listen to this, because expansion is what aligned relationships offer, not restriction, not confusion. And your heart needs this right now because confusion once felt like depth, but now it feels like misalignment. And listen closely, because misalignment can't survive in the presence of self-trust. And don't scroll, listen to this, because self-trust is what you've cultivated through every boundary you honored, every moment you chose clarity over comfort. And your heart needs this right now because self-trust is the anchor that keeps love steady when challenges arise. And listen carefully, because challenges don't disappear in aligned love, they become manageable. And don't scroll, listen to this, because manageability is what prevents love from turning into survival. And your heart needs this right now because survival mode is over. And listen closely, because you are no longer loving from wounds, you are loving from awareness, and don't scroll, listen to this, because awareness changes everything. It changes how you communicate, how you listen, how you respond instead of react, and your heart needs this right now because awareness makes space for mutual growth, and listen carefully, because mutual growth is what separates soulmates from karmic lessons, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you've completed the lessons, and your heart needs this right now because completion doesn't always come with closure conversations or dramatic endings. Sometimes it comes as peace so deep you no longer need answers, and listen closely, because peace is what you are standing in now. Even if excitement flickers alongside it, and don't scroll, listen to this, because excitement without anxiety is a sign of alignment, and your heart needs this right now because anxiety once kept you hypervigilant, scanning for signs of loss, and listen carefully, because you no longer live there, and don't scroll, listen to this, because the universe didn't bring you this far to let you fall back into old habits. And your heart needs this right now because what's unfolding next will reflect how deeply you trust yourself, not how much you hope, and listen closely, because hope without grounding creates fantasy, but trust creates reality, and don't scroll, listen to this, because reality is what your soul asked for, even when your mind wasn't sure, and your heart needs this right now because your soul has always known what it deserves, and listen carefully, because deserving is not about comparison. It's about compatibility, and don't scroll, listen to this, because compatibility exists when two people can meet without masks, without fear, without manipulation, and your heart needs this right now because you are no longer available for anything less, and listen closely, because availability is the key here, not availability to others, but availability to truth, and don't scroll, listen to this, because truth doesn't always say what we want, but it always says what aligns. And your heart needs this right now because alignment is what keeps you from betraying yourself for connection, and listen carefully, because self-betrayal was the cost of past love, and don't scroll, listen to this, because that cost is no longer acceptable to you, and your heart needs this right now because you value yourself differently now, and listen closely, because valuing yourself doesn't make you harder to love, it makes love clearer, and don't scroll, listen to this, because clarity attracts people who are ready, not those who are confused, and your heart needs this right now. Because readiness is what you recognize now more than chemistry alone, and listen carefully, because chemistry can ignite quickly, but readiness sustains connection, and don't scroll, listen to this, because sustainability is the quiet miracle no one talks about, and your heart needs this right now because quiet miracles last, and listen closely, because the universe is not asking you to rush into anything, prove anything, or protect yourself from something that hasn't happened, it is asking you to stay present, and don't scroll, listen to this, because presence is the doorway through which aligned love enters, and your heart needs this right now because presence keeps you rooted in the moment instead of projecting fear into the future, and listen carefully, because fear once shaped your expectations, and don't scroll, listen to this, because expectations rooted in fear distort reality. And your heart needs this right now because your expectations are now rooted in self-respect. And listen closely, because self-respect does not demand perfection, it demands honesty, effort, and care, and don't scroll, listen to this, because those are the standards you hold now without apology, and your heart needs this right now because standards protect love, they don't block it, and listen carefully, because protection is what allows love to grow without breaking you, and don't scroll, listen to this, because you are no longer afraid of being chosen and then losing yourself, and Your heart needs this right now because you know how to remain whole now, and listen closely, because wholeness is what makes this chapter different from every one before it, and don't scroll, listen to this, because this isn't just about being chosen by someone else, it's about you choosing alignment over fear, truth over illusion, and self-trust over old patterns, and your heart needs this right now because that choice is irreversible. And listen carefully, because when you choose yourself at this level, the universe responds with stability, clarity, and grounded love, and don't scroll, listen to this, because whatever unfolds next will not require you to abandon who you've become, it will meet you there, and that is the real prophecy, the one your soul has been moving toward all along.